big there at the end? Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so let's take it from the last two,
Or the third verse?
the third verse.
Is that okay?
Yeah, no, we got time. Let's do
Okay.
the third verse.
All right.
Grace and peace, oh how can this be? But songs of gratefulness never rise, never cease. But my God hath called as a saint. My heart is satisfied in the riches of Christ. Oh, what an amazing mystery! What an amazing mystery! That your grace has come to me. Oh, what an amazing love I see! What an amazing love I see! That your grace has come to me. Oh, what an amazing love I see! What an amazing love I see! That your grace has come to me.
All right.
Brother, do I need to unmute this?
Yeah, if we're going now, yes.
Okay. All right, if you want to see,
Which one?
first one's fine.
The hot seat.
All right. Are we all set?
Yeah, can Andrew just give me a little check? Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Michaela, you want to come up here and have a seat? You good? They got you a mic? Cool. So you guys just give me the thumbs up when we're all ready to go. How are you all doing this morning?
Great.
Doing well? Beautiful out, isn't it? So nice. Andrew, this is the first time I've actually seen your faces, I think. Isn't it?
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
We can put our masks on if it's better.
If it makes you feel more comfortable, we could all wear them.
AJ hasn't ran up here yet, so that's good.
Tim, are we broadcasting yet? We are? Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and start. Good morning. This is a very exciting morning for us, a morning we've been praying about for a long time. And so just wanted to kind of give us a heads up before we have a word of prayer how this is going to work. We have basically 3 locations. One obviously is in here, And if you have any questions, what we're going to do is we have 2 microphones set up, and we have to be a little bit more formal because there are a lot of people listening online. And so if you just shouted out a question, which normally is how we would run things, people at home wouldn't be able to hear, and I would have to repeat it so they could hear, and it would just take a lot longer. So if you have a question, just go ahead and walk up to one of these microphones and go ahead and ask that question if you're in here. But also, you'll notice on the screen, if you're listening to this at home, there should be a little link that is on your screen. And if you want to ask a question from home, all you got to do is open up your phone or your computer and type in the link that you see on the screen. Just type that in as you see it, and then type in the link, it says here, exactly, including the capitals. So like I see a capital R in there, make sure you are case sensitive to that. And you can also ask, like I said, you guys to just walk up to the phone or to the mic. But if you're in here and would rather ask a question from your phone, you could, okay? That's up to you as well. If you are listening to us, you're in the building, but in the fellowship hall, you can talk to Kurt. And he'll give me a question, or you can actually use the link, obviously, that's on the screen. If you're at home, you can use that link as well. But let's have a word of prayer, and then I'll give a little bit more instructions, and we're going to try to just launch right into questions, and hopefully this will be a beneficial time. Let's have a word of prayer. Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for bringing us here. Lord, I thank you for Mount Morris Community Church. And I pray that you would just be with us today as we hear from your word, as we just strive as a body to worship you. But Lord, I also thank you for Angie and Michaela. Lord, I thank you for their friendship, for their relationship. Lord, I pray that you would just be with them today. God, I pray that you would just calm any nerves, give them clarity of thought. Lord, I pray that you would just be with us in this whole process. All we all want is just your will. And Lord, we pray that you would show that to us and that you would lead in all this. In your precious name, amen. So what we're going to do is I have 2 questions that I have that I'm going to start off with. And hopefully these questions will spark some questions from you all. And they're aware of these questions, so they've had time to rehearse these. At least I think they did. But both of these questions, they're both going to answer. And then Michaela, she has, if you've seen the twin babies, they're as cute as can be. And little AJ, he's back there as well. She may have to go and help with them during this. But so we're leading off with these questions so she could be more free during this time. But first off, I just thought it'd be good to take each of you 1 to 2 minutes and just give us a brief testimony of salvation. If you want to start from birth and work all the way up to now, you could, but just take 1 to 2 minutes and give a testimony.
All right, so I've got to go before birth, and yeah, but kind of. So my father and my mother, they grew up in very different households. My dad grew up in California in a Mormon household. My mom grew up in southern West Virginia in a more Southern Baptist household, and you can probably fill in the blanks of how different those were. In a Mormon household, my mom grew up in Southern West Virginia. That's pretty cool. I don't like the way I sound. So, so they grew up in very different parts of the world. They met through certain circumstances, and they dated and all those things. But that's important because my father didn't grow up in a strong Christian home. And my mother grew up in a good Christian home, but it was very, we kind of live life throughout the week and then we go to church on Sundays. So I grew up in a Christian home. They were both saved pretty soon after they got married and started having children. They got saved and they joined the church, and I started going to church at 2 weeks old. And I stayed in that same church for 24 years of my life and came to know the Lord in that church. But I grew up in a Christian home, but they weren't first-generation Christians, but it wasn't an extremely sheltered Christian home. And I say that because while I grew up in church, it wasn't until I was about 15 years old that I truly came to know the Lord as my Savior. And through that, it is basically I started sinning. And it started to convict me, not because I might get caught by my parents, but because I knew I was getting caught by the Lord, and the Holy Spirit was convicting my heart. And even though I knew all the right things, I knew all the stories from Sunday school, I had scripture memorized, I didn't really know the Lord as my Savior. And at 15 years old, I finally came to that realization. Was baptized shortly after, and about 2 years after that, I felt God calling me to ministry about my junior year of high school. So.
Caleb?
Mine was a little different. My parents both grew up in very Christian homes. My mom's dad was a pastor her entire life, and then my dad's parents were also in church from the very beginning. So around the age of 4, I was in Awana, and I started, realizing what sin was and heaven and hell and all that kind of stuff. And I came to my parents and I was like, I really need to be saved. And my mom and dad didn't think I could actually understand it because I was only 4 years old. So I asked them questions, and they asked me questions. They quizzed me. Do you know what this means? Do you know what that means? And I was able to answer every question perfectly. As much as a 4-year-old can. And one night I came to them and I was like, I really need to be saved. And my mom, being I don't know what, she sent me to bed and she said, you sleep on it, and if it's still bothering you in the morning, you come talk to me. And I was like, okay. So 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm up in her room and I'm like, Mom, I need to be saved. And so it was at that time that she led me to Jesus. And then around the age of 5, I was baptized. I went to Christian camp like every kid does, and I think it was pretty young that I realized that, God was calling me into ministry and stuff, and I went to Christian school all my life, and then it was around the age of 12 or 13 that my dad became a pastor. Then Pastor Aaron was actually my youth pastor growing up, and he took us to camp in West Virginia. And it was there that I planned on going to Maranatha Baptist Bible College, now Maranatha University, or Baptist University, whatever it is. And there's a college down where we went to camp. And thanks to Pastor Aaron, it was about 3 weeks before I was supposed to head to college. And I was like, I think I'm going to go to this college instead of this college. And I switched. And it was there that Andrew and I met. And I earned my degree in elementary education. So did he. And so you pretty much have Pastor Aaron to thank for all of this. So, and God, of course.
Next question, and after this we'll open it up if you guys want to go ahead and ask questions. But what caused you both to want to pursue ministry?
You can go first.
That's a hard question. Other than the obvious God, I just, I knew from a young age, I guess a lot of Christian camp growing up in ministry, that that's where God wanted me. There's not really it was this. I guess I was just convicted that, God didn't want, there was never a job really that was appealing to me or anything like that. I knew I wanted to be a wife and a mom, and I knew ministry was probably where that was going to be. Having grown up in ministry, having been convicted through Bible camp and Christian school and stuff like that, I knew that that's what God wanted. I didn't know what that was going to look like. I knew I wanted to be a teacher from a really young age, and I assumed that I would be in a Christian school. I thought maybe a missionary, I thought maybe a pastor's wife. I had no idea what it was going to look like, but I knew that God wanted me in full-time ministry somewhere.
My junior year of high school, we had an evangelist come to our Christian school, and I remember I forget the passage, but he preached on how every Christian has a ministry to some extent. Even if you're not in full-time ministry, if you're a child of God, you have a ministry. And his big question was, what is yours, or what will be yours? And I remember that just ate at me for days and days, that I had no clue what my ministry was or what it would look like. And the end of your junior year, people start asking what college you're going to go to, what do you want to study. And all my friends were, I want to be a doctor, I want to go into trade school, I want to do this, and here I am sitting here, and I have no clue what I want to do. And I knew I was good at things, but nothing seemed to satisfy. I knew that if I just went and got a regular degree, or went to a trade school and worked a normal 9-to-5 job, I feel like I personally would have been missing the mark. And while I understand many people are called to do that, I didn't feel that was my calling in life to do that. I just couldn't be satisfied not serving God with every minute of my life in ministry. And so I wrestled with that for a while, and I actually went to 2 colleges before I landed at Appalachian Bible College. I went to one college, chasing sports this whole time. That was a big part of my life. So I chased soccer at one college and wasn't satisfied there. Went to another college, played soccer for them, was offered a scholarship, and still just wasn't satisfied with what I was studying or with where I was at life. And I finally sat down and talked with my dad and some other friends about it, and said I think the calling that I knew was my junior year of high school. It's not leaving me alone. So I decided to go to Appalachian Bible College. I grew up 25 minutes from there. I knew it well and decided to go there. Didn't know what I wanted to do. And so my pastor actually gave me some counsel, and he said, why don't you go get your double major, so you'll major in theology, but also get a degree that maybe this isn't what you thought it was going to be, or maybe you fall on hard times, or maybe you find a church that needs a bivocational pastor. Find a degree that could help you outside the church or missionary realm. So I decided to go into elementary education as well, because I wanted to work with youth at least for a part of my life. And so I double majored, got my elementary education degree, and ended up being a youth pastor as my first spot in ministry.
So from here on out, if you have questions that you want to ask, just feel free to step up to the mic if you're in here, or if you're listening to us on our live stream, go ahead and type those in. I have some more that will maybe spark some questions. And also, if you have any for Michaela especially, you might want to do that early, because from here on out, she may have to go and help with the kiddos. But if you have any questions, just feel free to step up here. Do we have any yet online, Chris? Nothing yet? Okay. Andrew, Michaela, if you don't have to answer these unless you want to chime in or whatever, but Andrew, what do you think are your spiritual gifts?
I think teaching is a big one. I think that even from a young age, I had this knack for being able to gain information and give it to others in a way that they could understand. When I grew up in a fairly small church, and when I was about 15 or 16, I was helping with the young kids in Sunday school with my mom or whatever, and so I found a love for teaching, and I found that it was something that I was good at. I think I'm good at administration as well, being able to lead people, but also to be able to delegate, lead by example, hopefully, and do those things. So I'd say those are probably my top 2.
Okay. Any questions? Mike, come on up.
Should have run. Andrew, I get the impression you're a pedal to the metal, type A personality. You're on the go all the time. Would that be correct? And I see. I've been involved with everything that you do to take care of your family and things that you've done in your life. And if you could elaborate on that a little bit, I would appreciate that.
Okay. I just want to clarify the question. So, am I go all the time? Is that the?
Kinda, yeah.
I would say if there's things to be done, I like to go until I get them done. But my wife would tell you that I like to rest as hard as I work. Whether it's, I'm an early riser by nature, and same thing in the military. I'm very much, if I have a list of things to do, I'd rather wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get all those bust out before noon, and then relax from noon till I go to sleep, than drag them out throughout the day. So when it comes to getting things done, I'm very much, if I have a deadline, I really want to just get it done. I also, even though these personalities conflict with each other, I'm also a procrastinator by nature. So oftentimes, whether it's in college writing a paper, if I've got 2 months to do it, I might sit on that until the night before, but then I'm going to work for 12 hours straight to get it done. So So when there's things that I know I need to get done, I'm very much the pedal to the metal, get it done. I'd rather wake up at 5 in the morning and mow the grass, weed eat, clean the house, get all of it done, and then sit on the couch the rest of the day. But as far as knowing how to relax, I really enjoy relaxing at the same time. So I hope that answers what you're asking.
Any other questions? Okay. Let's see here. What role do you think youth ministry plays in a local church? So a little
Okay.
bit. Some youth pastors, they come in and that is like all that exists.
Okay.
Some it's, I don't know, just, I'll stop right there. What are your thoughts of how a youth ministry should fit within the overall spectrum of a church?
Well, the way it should not work, I think, is youth ministry viewing themselves as separate from the church. I think that's extremely dangerous because what happens is you get teenagers that get to graduation age and they might go off to college and then they don't know how to come back and be part of the church. Or they go to college and they don't know how to find a church because they're not going to fit in the youth and they've been there in the church as a whole. So I think it's dangerous to see yourself as separate. So the way I see youth ministry, one is I see it as a ministry, not just to the youth, but also to the parents. I don't see youth ministry as you drop your kids off and let me change their lives. Hopefully they go through some life-changing experiences, but I see it as let me be a help to the parents. Let me disciple the parents if the parents are first-generation Christians and they don't know what they're doing, or they've got a problem child and they don't know how to handle it. So I see it as coming alongside the parents and being an aid to them, but also giving youth truth that they can apply to where they're at right there in life, and give them tools to protect themselves to do those things. Another avenue is to give a place where even if they're not Christians yet, godly kids can come together and be themselves and not have to worry about impressing their friends or outside of the church or whatever it might be. They can come to a place where they feel comfortable. I worked in camp ministry for 3 summers, and youth groups are like the weirdest kids in the world. But it's because they feel comfortable just being out there and they can laugh at and with one another. And I think building relationships in that way is a big help. And then lastly is I'm very big on youth learning how to serve their elders, the church as a whole. I don't want the youth just to come play a game, sing some songs, get some preaching, and go home. I want them to be involved in serving in the church, whether it's we have a picnic or an extracurricular activity in the church. Okay, well, how can the youth serve here too? Because we need volunteers from the church to do things. Where can the youth be plugged in to help serve as well, and start fostering that servant's heart?
At any time you have a question, just kind of step up to the mic. Chris, was there one that came in? Would you do outreach, and if so, what would it look like?
I think as far as youth goes, I think the best way to outreach for the youth is by the youth inviting their friends to come. I think getting out into the community is a great way, but I think we would need to start with strengthening the ones we have, and have them start inviting friends. And this time of life for youth is very interesting because they're very much go with what everyone else likes, and you see, I've seen youth groups grow because you have these teens that I don't really like my church, or we don't really go to church. Well, I love my youth group. You should come with me, and we're not perfect, but you can come with me. And I think that's a great way to outreach is have your core of regular attenders that are learning and growing weekly. Have them be your outreach, just as the church, as you all grow in the church. Hopefully, you're the best outreach for Mount Morris Community Church. So I think that would be the best way. But also, if we're going to do getting out in the community events, at our previous church we did trunk or treat, handed out tracts, and at times it seemed like a waste of time just passing out candy on Halloween. But out of 2 years of doing it, one family came to the Lord and joined our church because of it. So it looked like for 2 years we just kind of wasted time, but that was a great outreach. So I think doing events like trunk or treat, things like that is a great outreach, even though it might not seem like you're doing a lot at one time.
Matt?
Who would you say has been the greatest influence on your Christian walk?
Okay. I would say I have a lot. It depends on the time of life I was in. I'd say in high school, the administrator and principal at my school. So my dad was deployed. He was in the military for 29 years, and he was deployed when I was in 5th grade. And one of my best friends was our administrator and principal's sons, and I pretty much lived at their house for a year. The only way I was able to play sports is because they took me to practice, and there were some late game nights where they just said, okay, you can stay at our house. And so I was influenced by him a lot. He was our Bible teacher. He was my best friend's dad. He was the administrator of school. So he was a lot of things at a very important time in my life. So I'd say for that time of my life, it was him. And then when I went to Bible college, the dean of men, who is actually the director of adventures at Alpine Ministries now, John Sharp, he kind of, we sparked a friendship when I went to Appalachian Bible College because I had a problem with a lot of the rules. Not following them, but just the idea behind some of them. Because I was 22 years old coming in as a freshman at a Bible college. And so some of the rules I thought shouldn't apply to a 22-year-old, And so through a lot of conversations, we actually ended up sparking a friendship. He was also my soccer coach. And, just whether it was through the engagement time of life, giving me marital advice, to even now we talk on occasion and things, he's been a big help for my spiritual walk.
One question that I know you'll probably hear a couple times, but we have talked about as a church, you coming in initially the first year in a part-time role because of your commitment with Genesee Christian School. How do you see that allowing you, being a part-time for at least the first year, a part-time youth pastor, and a full-time employee at Genesee Christian, how do you see that providing enough time for you with your family? Do you think that's too much? Just how do you see that? Because I know one thing that is, I can give as a personal testimony, is a major focus, and rightly so here, is the church wants to make sure pastors have time with their family. And so how do you see that working? How do you see that balance?
So most of you all know that Christian school teachers aren't millionaires. So since I've worked at Genesee Christian, I've had to pick up extra jobs. So knowing soccer quite well, I've been a ref for MHSAA for 2 years. So a day in the fall or spring, I wake up, go teach all day, usually leave straight from school and go ref at another high school, usually a JV and a varsity game. And oftentimes I don't get home till 8:30, 9 o'clock whenever I do that. So right now I'm already not having a lot of time with family. So, if God were to call us here, if you all were to accept us here, then, that I wouldn't have to ref because I wouldn't need that income, and I'd be able to be home. Even if I was studying, I would still be present and be home and be able to devote more time, I think, with family through having this here. So.
And it's kind of weird for me to answer a question, but there would also be a lot of conversations taking place between Andrew and myself as far as his schedule's concerned. And obviously that first year, he would not have the full spectrum of responsibilities, but that it would be something that we would walk into as that next school year closes. But good. Let's see here. Sorry. Any other questions here before I move to another one? Or any online yet? Okay, next question. Are you okay with having a smaller youth group? And I'm going to add a little to that question. How, even though it's a smaller youth group, you're getting kids who are who go to public school, who are homeschooled, who go to Christian school, and have different schedules. Some are active in sports, some are active in band. It's just a crazy calendar that families and kids face. What would be a strategy going in that you'd be able to try to minister to each of those? So first, are you okay with a smaller youth group, and then how would you?
Yeah, I was, the youth group I grew up in was small. It was 7 or 8 there for a while, and then we moved up to 14 or 15, and then as families would leave the church, or as people would graduate from school and then leave. So I grew up in a small youth group, and I think there's some there's some upside to that, because you have more chance to have that intimate relationship, and they can really bond together. Some of my best friends, some of the best memories was with the small youth group I had. And then it also, if we do have visitors, or if we do have families come in, then you have that strong core of youth that is able to reach out and to really bring in others. When I was at North Baptist, we probably averaged about 25, 30 on Wednesdays. And that was nice, but I felt like sometimes things would slip through the cracks, or it was very easy to have a clique over here or a group over here. You would see the bus kids kind of over here by themselves, and the Christian school kids over here by themselves, and so it was kind of hard to change the culture there, because I wasn't really able to get in with the core youth. And then once I was able to, after about the first year, you saw everyone kind of coming together a little bit more. And I think a big thing that helps that, and I know this is off topic, but camp and going on retreats and things like that really help the youth come together and bond together. But so no, I'm not afraid of a small youth. I think there's good there, with hopes that it would grow in number. But I know it's cliche to say, but I really would hope that the ones we have are growing spiritually. I've had impressive numbers before and felt like the spiritual temperature was extremely low. So numbers aren't everything. But the other question was how to minister to different walks of life. So again, at North we had 30-some kids. If we had an event, sometimes it would grow to 40 or 50. And we had everything from public school to no school to whatever it might be. And I think that, again, where I grew up in a Christian home, and I don't want to use sheltered as a bad term, but I wasn't extremely sheltered. And so I had a lot of public school friends. So I'm not naive. And so I'm able to reach those students, because they're not going to trick me. But I also know what they're going through, because I had a lot of friends. I still have a lot of friends that are unsaved, or that have those influences of a public school and those wrong influences. So I think I'm able to help and reach those kids. And a lot of times kids like that, they're not used to a pastor being in their face and being excited that they're here. Sometimes they just want somebody to shake their hand and treat them like they're normal. And so the Christian school kids, oftentimes you might lose them because they've been hearing Bible all throughout the week, and now they get another Bible class. So, how can you put them in a place where maybe they're kind of leading and they're setting the spiritual temperature of the group? So I think it's interesting, but it's something I've dealt with before, and again, I think it's all just through fellowship and relating to one another. You work through those things.
I think we have another question coming in. How would you encourage a family that attends faithfully on Sunday morning but doesn't send their student to youth group?
Okay. I would start by hopefully starting a relationship with the parents, and hopefully getting to the point where they could answer the questions why not, without me feeling like I'm pushing them. But I would want to get to the heart of why not. Is it because your kid doesn't want to go, or whatever it is? Hopefully it would be I could be an encouragement to them, and help them see that if they want their child to go the right way, and maybe they don't know how, maybe they feel like they've lost control. How can I come alongside the parent and help them or encourage them? But I think I would really need to get to the heart of why, and then go from there, because it could be a whole array of reasons why either their child doesn't want to come or they don't want to send them. So I would want to get to the heart of that first.
Along with that, most of the questions, and I think rightly so, have been focused on teens, because that's a lot of what you'd be doing. But the overall spectrum is associate pastor of student ministries, which would include elementary children as well. How do you see yourself being able to minister to both groups? In the younger elementary age kids as well as teens? Obviously, you wouldn't be able to do it at the same time, but how do you see maybe your ministry differing with both groups?
So I have a degree in elementary education, which is helpful. but I grew up again in a small church, and actually the church where they're at now is their young ones are very large compared to their teens, and sometimes that ebbs and flows. But I think probably more administration, I guess, in that area, more delegating in that area. I would very much want to make sure if it's a program we're running, that it's being run well. It's a doctrinally sound program. It's actually beneficial. So I would hopefully be able to find good teachers, good helpers that could be involved in that. Whether it's junior church or whether it's I'll take a month and I'll teach the kids so they can see so they can see me for a little while. So I think delegating, being over it, making sure that their program or whatever is being taught is good, it's sound, and it's helpful. Making sure the teachers are prepped and prepared, that they have what they need. But also, hopefully, maybe being able to take some weeks off of teaching the teens and maybe drop down and be there with the young ones for a little while and then going back up or whatever it might be.
Michaela, if you want, I see you're back in here, but if you want to weigh in on any of these, feel free still to do so. But how do you see yourself when you first come, if the Lord brought you here? How would you see yourself? What would be your main initial focus? What would be your main initial focus? What would be your main strategy coming in?
I think first would be getting to know your names. I'm awful with names, and so if you introduce yourself to me and I have you reintroduce yourself to me, I hope you don't take it personally. But
I don't know anyone else like that.
Yeah, so I'm awful with names, but hopefully just getting to know the church in general. But one thing that we really wanted to do when we were at our first ministry location is have dinner with the teens and their parents, or just their parents, or whatever it might be, to start that relationship. There's a lot of freedom when you have a good relationship with the parents of your teens, because if you say something and it was taken the wrong way, hopefully your door isn't going to get bust down the next day. Hopefully the parent's going to call you and say, hey, I heard this was said, but I don't feel like that's you. Can you explain that to me? So I think, having that relationship where they trust you with their teens, takes a lot of trust to put your kids on a bus and send them down to West Virginia for a week with some guy and his wife. It takes a lot of trust. So I think building the trust and building a relationship there, so the parents feel comfortable with me ministering to their teens, but I can minister to the parents as well. So I think that would be the first action plan, is to build those relationships with the teens, but also with the parents.
Any questions? Yeah, Dave?
Any musical abilities?
No agenda there.
Yeah. Michaela and I both, we've been in the choir in every church we've been to. I know you don't have a choir. I think they said around Christmas time you try to put a choir together, so we'd be interested in that. But we both sing, really enjoy music ministry. I think other than preaching and teaching, singing music ministry is my favorite thing to do. I don't play an instrument. All I do is sing. Michaela won't like that I said this, but she does play piano. She hasn't played in a while, so she is rusty, but I think, given the time, I know that that's something that she did once upon a time. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, it's kind of weird that you're from West Virginia and you don't play the banjo.
No. I've attempted to play 5 different instruments and never could keep them long enough. So,
All right.
yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
The other one's on evangelism. Maybe you can speak a little bit to that and the role of teens in that age group and what that looks like to you.
I think it's just being present where your teens are. I remember when I was in youth, we lost some youth, and I don't want to steal any youth from other churches unless they're just not a doctrinally sound good church where they're not getting fed. But we lost quite a bit of youth because there were youth pastors in the area that were full-time youth pastors that were doing things that the unpaid youth leader at our church wasn't doing. They were going to football games to see their youth play, and they're like, "That's pretty cool. Your youth pastor came to your football game." Or they're just present in the lives of their teens, and their friends saw that and saw, "Oh, I want to be part of whatever this is." There was one church, and this is just for instance, there was one church that did fifth quarter, and so Friday night after the football game, they would open up their youth center and they would have a good, safe place where the teens of the high school could come, and the youth group or the teens that were in the youth spread the word. Hey, our church does fifth quarter after the football game. If you guys want to come have free pizza, free games and stuff, and that was and even though some churches oftentimes try to kind of entice people in and then hit them with the gospel. That was just a way for them to show, this is a place where your friends enjoy coming and they learn about the Lord, and you've noticed something different in their life, and this is a big part of their life. And so I think, again, just being part of the teens' life that you have here, it's going to resonate with their friends that might be unchurched. Word travels quickly that's a great place to send your kid. That's a great place to where teens go and they learn about the Lord. So hopefully that is a big area. But so that's a great outreach. Our church for a while we got involved in some of the local high schools. Before away games, our church a lot of churches in the area started coming together, and they would get on a list and they would come in and give a devotional to the team, and they would feed them dinner before they went to their away game. So they didn't have to worry about going and getting fast food or whatever before the away game, and they'd take it right to the school. So I think there's great opportunity to get your name out there that, hey, we're here, and we have fun, we do great things, but we learn about the Lord, and I think, again, if the teams that we have are getting fed and they are enjoying being here, then it's going to travel around.
Chris, go ahead. How do you see your ministry branching out to 20 and 30-year-olds to allow for teaching to this group?
Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm reading the question right. So how would I reach those that are transitioning out?
For those who maybe have left the youth group,
Gotcha. Okay.
but yet are someone's maybe say college and career,
Okay.
that age group.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, I don't know if it would be me necessarily teaching that, but I believe that age group, they need, and I'm in that age group, I'm almost out of that age group, but not quite yet, but I see a big thing that Michaela and I, whenever we left North and we were just looking for a church that we wanted, was that age group that gets together. Because that age group doesn't, and I'm in it so I can speak bad about ourselves, we don't get together and sit on each other's front porches and drink coffee anymore. And, you know, I see that the older demographic in the church, a lot of times they are, you know, let's get together, let's go on a trip, let's go wherever it might be. And oftentimes that age group, they don't want to really get together. Or if they don't, it's not that they don't want to, but nobody is standing up and saying, hey, let's get together this weekend. Everybody come over to my house, or let's go to an orchard in the fall, or whatever it might be. So I think, you know, creating opportunity for that age group to get together and fellowship is a big thing. I think fellowship is a huge part of the church that almost above anything else, that's what's going to make you feel like your family is the fellowship that you receive here. So giving them opportunity to fellowship, and hopefully, you know, someone possibly in the church saying, I think I could minister to that age group. I think I could teach a Sunday school for that age group, or you know, maybe we'll meet on Thursdays or Wednesdays and get together and do a small group together. And you know, if I could be involved in that, that'd be great. You know, maybe not first few months, but down the road, I think that'd be a great opportunity as well. So just making, again, just wanting everyone to know that they are part of the family and not on the outskirts.
I'd like to back up a question, Dave's question about evangelism. There's a couple different steps in evangelism. I've heard it described as we build bridges to people. And I know a lot of what we do as a church is that bridge building. But how would you, maybe personally, but then also help provide tools for teens to be able to cross those bridges, to be able to actually convey the gospel? I mean, I know as preachers, we stand behind a pulpit and do that, but, and people do respond to that, praise the Lord. I mean, that's the model of Scripture. But what are some ways that you can see, maybe as a preacher in a youth setting, or maybe just one-on-one with a teen, but then also factoring in how to train teens to build bridges, but not just to have all these bridges, but to actually cross them with people?
So one of the first things I did when I was at North was actually go through a 6-week series on how to reach your friends. And I haven't done that in 4 years, so I don't remember all the steps that they brought out. It was all alliterated and great. But, you know, one of them, the first thing was building that relationship. And many of them already have that relationship with their friends.
Yeah.
Hopefully they've lived a testimony where their friends know they're different. And so I feel like that's usually the biggest step to reaching someone with the gospel is they oftentimes see your life and they see something different in your life. And so, you know, from there on out, it's just, you know, training teens. Again, they're in a very interesting part of life where if something is pushed on them too hard, they just want to back away just for the sake of backing away. But if it's not pushed on them hard enough, then it's not going to go anywhere. So I think, you know, going through those, maybe that I'll dig up that series again on how do you reach your friends that maybe have known you for 10 years and they know some of the bad things you've done. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing for teens is an honesty with their friends. That, yeah, I know you've seen me do this, or I know I've said this word, but, you know, explaining that how the gospel has changed their life. And again, just so the way they live, but also just being able to give them biblical truth of this is the gospel. You know, I remember even when I was a teenager, our youth leader, he did an activity where he said, all right, you're going to grab one of your friends and you're going to tell them what the gospel is. And we all were like, and it was amazing that none of us could do it. None of us could explain to someone how does salvation work. And so just going through those steps and practicing it. And it feels weird practicing it with your sister or brother or somebody you've known or somebody that you've been in church with your whole life. But it's good to do those things. So,
any other questions? We got about 15 minutes left of this hour, maybe a little less. I have more questions. I can keep going, but I don't want to dominate it here. What do you think is a good strategy? I know a lot of folks will look at a youth ministry, and often the first thing that comes to mind are activities. and you've talked a little bit about activities, but how often do you think is a good amount? I've been involved in some youth groups where with school and family and youth group, I mean, the activities are just everywhere. What do you think is a good strategy for setting a calendar for activities? Because they're going to be present in a youth ministry. They're not the main focus, but they're going to be present.
Yeah. I think, I enjoy doing them, trying to do them once a month, as well as possible. Whether it's a Friday evening or a Saturday or whatever it might be. I know a lot of people, their Saturdays are booked up. So I try to come out with at least a quarterly schedule of here are three things that we're going to do. So for instance, July we're going to have a cookout. August we're going to go watch a baseball game, and September we're going to go to an apple orchard. And these are the dates. This is the cost, if any. And even some of them I'll say invite whoever you want. Some I'll say it's just our youth group. This one we're just going to come together as our group, as ones that are faithfully attending the church. Because oftentimes what happens is I don't want every activity to become a huge thing, and it's not helpful to anybody. It's just an excuse to get your friends and hang out for a weekend or get away from your parents or whatever it might be. So some I'll say, hey, invite your parents to this one. Parents and teens, come on out. Some I'll say, hey, teens, it's just for regular attenders. And then some I'll say, hey, we're going to do this event. Invite every friend you can possibly invite. And we're going to do something big or whatever it might be. So, then on top of that, so doing once a month and also occasionally doing stuff after church. Sunday evening, we're going to do ice cream, or, we're going to play kickball or whatever it might be. So doing small scale things like that, but also trying to do events that people can plan around and look forward to. I think that's helpful. Camp is a big thing. I think some of the most impactful times I've had in my life was at camp. So going on trips, going to camp is always great, because you get away from the world, and it's called retreat for a reason. You're retreating from the world. You're getting to a place of safety to become stronger and go back out into the world. So I think all those things are great, and just communicating, giving people plenty of time to plan, and trying to, and with a small youth group, you can kind of communicate a little bit more. Okay, this Saturday doesn't work for half of you, so we're going to do the next Saturday or whatever it might be. So
Let me paint a scenario to you that may or may not happen, but it's a youth group night. You just preach your heart out, and the Lord used that in a mighty way in the life of a teenage girl. And she comes to you and says, Pastor Andrew, I really want to talk to you about something you mentioned tonight. Could we talk? How would you handle that situation?
First thing, I would make sure my wife is present. I've been taught that in almost every sphere of life I've been into, that if something like that needs to happen, then make sure at least a second party is present. In that situation, I would much prefer my wife to be there, because maybe she can answer a question or minister in a way that I can't. And so again, if it's something that just needs to happen, a conversation between me and that person, then it protects both parties. So I think that would be a big thing, is getting a woman's perspective on it, but also having my wife there, or if she's not available, getting someone, one or two people that the person would feel comfortable talking openly around, to have extra wisdom, but also that accountability.
Another scenario that it's not if, it's when. You get someone who is unruly, not very receptive to your kind pleas to behave, but just continues to be obnoxious. How would you handle a teen or child like that?
I'm very much big on why, figuring out why people do things. Maybe I was a psychologist in a past life, but I really would want to get to the heart of why. Why does this person, are they doing it just because they don't like, their parents are forcing them to be here, they hate it here, and they're trying to disrupt everything possible? Or are they doing it because they're the odd man out in the youth, and maybe they don't have a lot of friends, and they're trying to get attention from someone? And I've had, I haven't had the first, but I've had the second happen before, where I had a student that just spoke out every chance he got. And I realized if I just gave him kindness, then he would just do it more, because he would feel like he was invincible. He could do whatever he wanted, and I wouldn't get onto him. So in that situation, I realized it's because he wanted to get laughs. He wanted people to accept him, but also he was trying to get my attention. And I realized that if I gave him some attention, and I had a conversation with him and let him know, like, you are making my job harder. And it became personal. And he realized, I'm not just acting up and getting laughs. I'm making your job harder, and I want you to like me. So whenever he realized, oh, I'm making your job harder, he took that as his responsibility to not make my life harder. It wasn't perfect from there on out, but I think there was then that respect between us where if he did act up, I could just kind of, I didn't have to call him out, I could just kind of give him the, hey, stop doing that look, and he got it back together. But if there was one that was just unruly for the sake of being unruly, hopefully, again, I have a good relationship with their parents and could figure it out that way. I'm not big, even when I teach at school, I'm not big on, yelling at someone right in front of I'm not big on yelling at all, but yelling at someone right in front of everyone, I'm more of a, I'll make a note of this and talk to you afterwards and see if we can figure it out, and then kind of go from there. So, if it's getting to the point where they're just not going to have it, then it could be to the point where I ask them to not come because you're being a distraction to everyone else. But hopefully it wouldn't. Hopefully I could put out that fire long before it got to that point.
Right. Got about 5 minutes left. If you have a question in you, go ahead and just step up to the mic. If not, I'll ask a few more here. But I'm going to ask you a question that will be impossible to answer, but I'll ask it anyway.
Okay.
How long, if the Lord does bring you to Mount Morris Community Church, how long do you see yourself here?
I spent junior year to, so it's 17 to 21 years of age, trying to put timelines on things and trying to say, I'm here for this long, or I'm going to do this, and being very definite in my plans. And I've learned to not do that anymore. I don't want to say I'm here for 5 years and then I'm done. I don't want to say I'm here for 5 weeks and then I'm done. I will be here, and as cliche as it sounds, I will honestly be here as long as the Lord has me here. If that is, until I die, then okay. If that is a very short time, then okay. I went through a few years of my life not doing exactly what the Lord wanted me to do, and I believe He's got a plan for everything. He works even when we are not perfect, but I knew there was multiple times where I should have stayed and I left, or I should have left and I stayed. So I don't want to do that anywhere. So I'll stay here as long as the Lord has me, and I'll leave the second He tells me to leave. So.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to have a word of prayer, and then Andrew will be preaching in just, I don't know, about 45 minutes or so. So this has been, I don't know if you've ever been part of anything like this, but it is mentally exhausting. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give him some time. He can go hang out in my office or whatever, Michaela as well, where they can just go and kind of, normally this would be a great fellowship opportunity, wouldn't it? We'd be out in the fellowship hall having coffee, and you guys would be able to interact and all that, but circumstances as they are, we're just not going to be able to do that. Maybe we can have some fellowship time after the service outside in the parking lot, and we can do that. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a word of prayer, and then we can be dismissed for the next 30 minutes. If you want to go outside, it's beautiful out there, and just mingle and talk out there if you prefer. Or if you want to just hang out in here until the service, you're more than welcome to do that. But Andrew and Michaela, they're going to go and just get some downtime before the service, and then maybe have some fellowship time after our worship service, if that makes sense. But let's have a word of prayer, and we can be dismissed. Lord, I do thank you for this time. I thank you for the questions that were able to be asked, and Andrew's answers. And Lord, from day one, when we started this whole process, we just wanted your will, and that has continued throughout this process, and it's true now. Lord, I know Andrew and Michaela, they just want your will into where they could come and where they could be ministered and where they could be ministered to. And Lord, that's what we want as well. I pray that you would guide us. Lord, I pray in the immediate future here in this morning service, you would just be with Andrew as he preaches. I pray you just be with every aspect of the service. We just want to praise and glorify you. Help us to have open hearts to your word, and that you would guide and teach us today. And I just thank you again for this time in your precious name. Amen. If there is a question that you wanted to ask and never did, I'm sure that after the service this morning outside, that Andrew would be more than willing to talk with you. Cool? All right. Thank you. You're dismissed.
They had the opportunity.